Kathy, oh, it is so good to see you. How are you doing?
I am excellent today. Thank you for asking. How are you? I'm so happy to be here too. I'm energized with you.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Actually, we're going to be talking a lot about cellular energy and mitochondrial energy and just women feeling more like themselves again. And I want to start with the most kind of one of the most important questions in this realm, because I know that so many women don't know what nitric oxide is and why it's important for us in our 40s and our 50s and why no one's mentioning it in the doctor's office. So can you kick us off with a little bit about yourself, just your story and how nitric oxide plays an important role not only in the women that you get to take care of, but as a whole, like how women can navigate midlife with this powerful, what I call vitality molecule.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Let's start with how I first learned about nitric oxide, and that
Yes.
was in a biochemistry class very long ago, early studies of anatomy and physiology towards my first degree in exercise science and physiology. And at that point in time, all we really talked about for nitric oxide was that it was important for energy production in the body and it helped people have better physical performance in the gym and recover faster. And that's really all we talked about. And we talked about eating beets to do that, to get that effect. I am a body worker originally, a personal trainer, a nutritionist for the last 20 years. And since then, I've learned just how foundational this vitality, longevity molecule is to our bodies, and especially to women as we are in this perimenopause, menopause transition of life. So, nitric oxide itself is a molecule that we naturally make in the body. It is a gas. It's simply two atoms. It's an atom of nitrogen and an atom of oxygen. And we make it a couple ways in the body. There's a complex enzyme pathway where we can make it from ingredients we already have in our body. And then there's a complementary pathway using dietary nitrates to ingest nitrate into the body. We get those in our leafy green vegetables. And I'm sure we'll talk more about food sources. And we break those nitrates down into nitric oxide to signal multiple physiological mechanisms in the body. The first thing it was known for was vasodilation, widening, opening blood vessels, contributing to better blood flow, control of blood pressure, control of heart rate, and circulation in the body. That's really where we learn about the primary benefits by studying the research. What we now know after 50 some years of research into this molecule since it was discovered is all these other signaling mechanisms that it contributes to in the body. So we know that it plays a role in women's health, especially in terms of gut function, in terms of sleep, in terms of immune function, hormone balancing, mental and emotional function, heart health, of course,
Of
cardiovascular
course, yeah.
at
That's
at
what
the top
made
of
me
the
so
list.
fascinated about it.
Yes.
Sexual function too.
Yes, exactly. Sexual function. And so why aren't doctors talking about it? I think it's so foundational and so primary that traditional medical models don't investigate a deficiency in the capacity to produce nitric oxide because they assume that our body is going to take care of it on our own. They neglect the fact that with years of life and oxidative stress, we reduce our capacity to make nitric oxide. And then I think that traditional medical models also believe that we can get enough dietary nitrate on our own in the average daily diet to produce nitric oxide. But when we know that the Center for Disease Control tells us that 9 out of 10 Americans do not eat the minimum recommended number of vegetables in a day, 90% of us aren't eating our vegetables. So when we know that nitrates are concentrated in leafy green vegetables and we're not eating them, we can assume that we're going to be deficient across the board. And then we add the impacts of lifestyle factors that have created oxidative stress in our bodies and in our blood vessels where nitric oxide is primarily produced in the body. And we see the cascade and we see the plummeting of our ability to produce it earlier and earlier in life. And I'm witnessing that clinically, and I think you are too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely am witnessing it clinically earlier. And where it really begins to highlight and where I want to focus our attention as well is in that perimenopause transition. We know that the decline in estrogen plays a profound impact in decline in nitric oxide levels in the body and how that I feel like it's a domino effect.
It is. And it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario too, because we need nitric oxide to keep endothelial cells healthy, and endothelial cells house hormone receptors, including your estrogen receptors. And when your receptors don't work well, the hormones that you do have that are already on decline in perimenopause, they don't send and receive signals as well. And so we get this, and we also know that estrogen plays a role in signaling the need for nitric oxide in the body. So it's a bidirectional relationship, and it's declining as we age naturally. But then all the exacerbating factors of a modern lifestyle are contributing to just an enhanced decline.
Absolutely. Like you talked about the oxidative stress that is playing a role as well, or maybe even the gut issues that we're having. Like it feels like it just kind of spins out of control very quickly.
Yeah, it can very quickly in terms of like if we could see inside our vessels, we would see the progressive decline and the damage to the tissues, but we don't see that. And we also don't feel it in terms of dramatic signs. What we feel are what are called normal signs of aging that really shouldn't be normal just because they're common. And we can talk about those signs as well, because I think a lot of women, especially, take it for granted that they just are going to be fatigued because they're a busy working mother, or they're going to sleep poorly because they're entering menopause, or they're going to have gut issues because their doctor has told them, well, this happens as you age. And we know that that's not true, that we can be preventive and proactive and restore some of that function and retain our vitality as we go through this period of life.
Yeah, it's very much that silent shift. We don't
Yes.
feel that happening. We don't feel our blood vessels becoming more rigid. We don't feel hypertension or our blood pressure going up. We don't feel the vascular compromise that's beginning to happen due to the decline of estrogen, but also just the inconsistency in terms of receptor site, binding. And then what that leads to as well, like you said, it's kind of like this, it feels like a bit of a spiral, like that chicken or the egg situation. But when the expectation is that we're just not supposed to feel great, or it's this downward decline, or this is just kind of the way it is, isn't helpful because we have these silent shifts, but we're also told that it's just kind of the way it is. It's just not setting us up to win.
It's not a solution. It's just reiterating the fact that we don't feel great and we want to feel better. And we're being told that that's not possible. And we know that's not true. It is possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. We got to stop the normalizing of women not feeling like themselves anymore, particularly in perimenopause and menopause, because it absolutely doesn't have to be that way. However, I know we're going to get into is how do we get to be proactive? If even, let's say, I mean, all of us are coming into this transition with oxidative stress. I always say that very few of us are coming in with a clean bill of health or a clean slate of health into
Right.
perimenopause. Like usually maybe it's a little bit of insulin resistance or deregulated cortisol or polycystic ovarian syndrome or even just stress and burnout. Often we're coming into peri with some level of oxidative stress and inflammation, and then it just tends to kind of, as I like to say, ratchet up a little bit as it exacerbates over time as these hormones, these kind of protective hormones, begin to falter, right? And so when we're talking about cardiometabolic health, because that is still the number one killer of women, I just want to make it really clear. If heart disease is not just a man's disease here, it's a woman's disease. And for us, it often gets missed, it gets overlooked. But if we can be in front of it, if we can be proactive, particularly when it comes to ensuring that we've got good nitric oxide levels, we can really set ourselves up for success in terms of our cardiometabolic health. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and how can we be proactive? How can we be testing and looking? Are there ages that we should consider starting to really pay more close attention to this?
Absolutely. I believe that women starting at age 30 should really start paying attention to the signs that their body are showing them. We know that by age 40 to 50, due to varying levels of oxidative stress, that our ability to internally produce nitric oxide is reduced by about 50%. That percentage has been growing our whole life. We are born and we are immediately put into this sort of stressful environment and we thrive, but we don't pay attention to some of the signs. And so, as early as 30, but especially around age 40, And, pay attention to the signs you see in your friends and family as well, too. I think sometimes recognizing signs and symptoms in the ones we love, our girlfriends, our mothers, our grandmothers, our daughters, I think we can pay attention to those signs and recognize that that's not how that woman used to be. And what does that look like inside myself? So, common signs that I hear from patients all the time start with, I just don't have energy anymore. I don't have energy for just basic activities of daily living. It's hard for me to jump out of bed in the morning and get going, but I force myself to do it because it's the only time I'm going to get a workout, right? We also hear complaints of things like cold hands and feet. That's a sign of reducing circulation. We hear about brain fog. Women like this term brain fog. I find that male patients don't describe it the same way. Women have sort of been trained to expect foggy thinking when they turn 40. And you might notice it in missing some words, in calling your kids the wrong name, just little things like that that show that not all your synapses are firing the way as brightly as they should be. Another common complaint, dry skin. Dry skin, and especially on the hands and feet, but even the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles that feel a little early onset, even if you've been taking great care of your skin. Hair loss, digestive issues, especially constipation. I find that the majority of women I have treated over the years entering perimenopause with a nitric oxide deficiency are going to be constipated because we know that nitric oxide contributes to gastric motility as well as to leaky gut repair. So we can start to tie some of these digestive issues back to that very foundational need. Then we talked about sexual function, just a lack of libido, loss of desire for your partner. Just, you feel like coupled with the energy, the fatigue, you're just too tired to even think about having sex. And so it becomes something that's taken away out of the lifestyle. And then what kind of quality of life is that if we don't have that connection with our partners? Temperature regulation, this is probably the most talked about perimenopausal sign are the hot flashes and the night sweats. And they seem to impact women at different stages of their perimenopausal journey. Some women don't experience it until later in towards menopause. Some women, I know women in their 30s already having hot flashes and just, sweating bullets in a meeting and feeling really uncomfortable and also just a little embarrassed because they're the only one in the room, taking their sweater off and dabbing their forehead kind of thing. So, and then just sleep disruption would be another one. And noticing that it's harder to fall asleep, it's harder to stay asleep, and it's harder to get up in the morning. And any combination of those three is a sign that nitric oxide balance is off.
As you're listing out those symptoms, that those feel very much like the classic perimenopause, menopause symptoms. And so it really ties back to the bi-directional relationship that you talked about earlier, that absolutely this is all so deeply interconnected and how important estrogen and nitric oxide are in terms of their bioconnection, their connection to one another.
Absolutely. Yes. And we know this is the other thing we know in the research literature is we see this dramatic drop in nitric oxide production in women after the age of 40 and between ages about 40 to 55. We see this plummeting. It's directly correlated to the information we know about increasing cardiovascular disease risk, increasing risk of strokes, blood clots, things like that. So as you said, you and I are on the same page. We feel it's imperative that women get this information and start to be proactive about their cardiovascular health. In addition to, wouldn't it be nice to sleep better, lose some of that belly fat, feel stronger? That's another sign I think women notice is that they don't feel like they have the same capacity for exercise.
Oh, yeah.
They can't get through their routines as easily. The yoga class feels more difficult than it used to or than it should to them. And I think that's another really common early sign to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, and then as a result, we ended up adapting to that because we don't have the capacity. So we stop lifting the heavier weights. We
Yes.
move more towards maybe cardiovascular things that feel a little bit easier, more manageable. And that doesn't always work in our favor in the long run. Yeah.
And the other thing that women do, they try harder.
Oh, yeah. We over effort.
I feel tired, so I'm going to get up even earlier and go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning instead of 7 o'clock in the morning, when really your body might have benefited better from that additional couple hours of sleep. But, we add more to the plate and we add more to the schedule. thinking that if we just run faster and try harder and over effort, as you said, that things are going to get better, when really all we're doing at that point is adding to the oxidative stress that we've already generated in the body.
Yeah. I was just talking to my mom about that yesterday. We were at Disneyland as a family, and she was pretty tired. And she's like, I was up at 4 o'clock or in the morning and I was running with my friends. And now I'm not really have a lot of, and I'm like, you don't have to do that. Like, I was just like, she's like, a lot of people say that to me. I'm like, we've been having this conversation for 2 decades.
But your mom's an overachiever, it sounds like.
Overachiever. And I think that's always been the narrative, particularly for women, is that it's their fault, that if they're not getting the results that they should be getting, that they need to try harder and do more and do harder. And, so I feel like it's either we really don't have capacity and we step back, or we try to keep overdoing or over pushing, which kind of lends us, like you said, more oxidative stress, more changes in our lipids and in our biomarkers, that we can really see a decline in oxidative or in nitric oxide is what we'll ultimately end up seeing as well. I want to steer the conversation a little bit into, let's say your doctor just isn't aware. Like you said, we talked about how we should just be able to make it. Our body should just be able to do it. Just like your liver should just be able to do all the jobs it's supposed to do. And, or your gut should just be able to digest. And we just know that limitations of matter here, and oxidative stress can lend to a liver that's a bit more sluggish, or fatty liver, or a gut that has dealing with dysbiosis. And obviously nitric oxides could be playing a role here as well, but that our body should just be able to do this. And it's very clear that in the world that we live in today, especially in perimenopause and menopause, as hormones are declining, that is not the case for so many of us. And we're seeing the end result of it. I'm like, if that is true, then why are we seeing more and more women dying of cardiovascular disease? Like, if these things were true, why are women struggling with all of these metabolic changes and cardiovascular issues? And even, earlier than it used to be. So I'd love to speak into, how do we get to be proactive? How can we have agency knowing our numbers? And you talked about as soon as 30, kind of just really paying attention to our bodies, knowing our bodies, looking out for the symptoms. Diagnostically, what would you also recommend?
I would also recommend, just as well as being aware of those signs and symptoms that we can really feel when we are body aware, paying attention to following up with your physician yearly, or, hopefully you're working with somebody more like yourself, more of a functional medicine provider, and you're meeting a little more frequently than that. So paying attention to things like, is your blood pressure creeping up over time? And just because you've had several stress events in a row, our body should be able to adapt to stress responses. We're designed for that. We're sort of kicked out into the world with no clothes on, and we're sort of designed to adapt to being hot and cold and crying for hunger and thirst and all those kinds of things. So we need to pay attention to those survival mechanisms. And one of those survival mechanisms is regulating our blood pressure. So whether you're checking your own blood pressure at home, which is really easy to do with a home kit, and looking for consistent patterns, or if you're returning to your physician and seeing that number creep up over time, and the physician is starting to worry and say, I think we need to put you on a hypertension medication, that's the time to stand up for yourself and say, are there other things I can do before taking a medication that would reduce my blood pressure? And start that conversation. I would also look at those inflammatory markers that are common on a regular blood test that we get yearly, typically, looking for things like your glucose levels. And glucose levels can rise when we start to become insulin resistant. And by the way, nitric oxide plays a role in how sensitive we are to our own insulin and how it helps us manage our blood sugar. And so we want to make sure that we're not letting our blood glucose creep up too high. Another marker on top of that is hemoglobin A1C. That is the 3-month marker of blood glucose. I would look at that. You oftentimes have to ask for markers for cardiovascular disease risk factors, and that would include things like homocysteine and C-reactive protein, high-sensitivity C-reactive protein. Those are markers of inflammation, and they can start to elevate, and that's something to pay attention to. Our low-density lipoprotein type of cholesterol marker, the LDL, that's a sign of inflammation. So when we see that, that can naturally creep up with age, as you well know, but when we see dramatic jumps in it, 20, 30, 40 points a year going up, we start to wonder, where is that inflammation coming from? And what can we do to regulate it, to modulate it? Another important marker as it relates to nitric oxide is vitamin D and vitamin D3. Exposure to sunlight, we've learned over the years, is very important, making sure we produce vitamin D. But vitamin D3 in the body plays a role in signaling the release of nitric oxide to keep blood flow healthy through the layers of the skin. It all plays part of that drying skin, aging skin, but also just keeping those tissues happy and regenerating on their own. So we want to make sure we look at that important marker as well, too. You can get fancier with testing. You can look for metabolites of mitochondrial function, which is your energy production. So you can do urine testing to look for some of those metabolites. But I think the average woman seeing a physician needs to just open the conversation and say, I never used to feel this tired. I get winded going up the stairs. I am finding myself parking closer to the front door of the big box store parking lot because I feel too tired to walk across, when really it might be easier to get out of the parking lot when I leave if I parked in the back. So those little things, we just have to be educated on ourselves, listen to our bodies, and ask the physician that we see for their input. If you're not getting the answers, implore your physician to do some investigation and get back to you. If they are not able to do that for you, it's time to find a new physician. And then you talk to your girlfriends and you talk to the people that you see thriving and you see them sort of returning to their former self. That's who you ask for the referral. You can, and unfortunately in this day and age, you're probably going to have to pay out of pocket for a lot of this, but you are worth it. And you are worth that money more than you need a $7 mocha at a coffee shop, right? We want to invest our dollars in ourselves and understand that we're worth it to spend the money on ourselves to get the answers we need.
Yeah, we're worth more than the blood sugar roller coaster from that mocha. Well,
Right?
one of the things you pointed out, one, I love the labs, particularly the cardiometabolic labs, like homocysteine. Please be looking at that, fibrinogen, sed rate. Like, let's take a look at these cardiovascular markers, lipoprotein little a, ApoB, like as early as 40, we should be looking at these markers because, again, your cardiovascular health is the epicenter of everything. So, in particular, your energy. But I loved the subjective signals and signs, like you not taking the stairs because you don't have energy for it. You're taking the elevator. Now, I have to take the elevator because my son always wants to take the elevator. He wants to push the buttons. That's the phase of life that I'm in. I'm always trying to get him to take the stairs, but he's just like, no, we got to push these buttons. So that's the funny thing about mom life. But I always park the furthest away. I'm like, how many more steps can I get? But if I saw myself cutting corners because I didn't have capacity, that would definitely be something I would be concerned about. Like, and that, something, whether you bring it up to your doctor or not, just worth kind of putting a pin in it, worth tracking that and saying, oh, am I making concessions or am I finding myself having to take an easier path because I don't have the energy? I'm winded to do those things. I think that is such a really big, I would consider that a big red flag, something to be flagging pretty quickly. I love that. And then I know that there are ways that we can test our nitric oxide levels. So if you really wanted to know in real time, I'm a big real time person. I love my Whoop strap. I love the Oura ring. I love continuous glucose monitors. I love real time monitoring because we can make real time changes. And I think that is just so powerful because numbers don't lie. Numbers are going to tell us what's up. And based on that data, let's make the shifts.
Data can be motivating, too. That's what I find. So yes, Berkeley Life carries a nitric oxide test strip. It is a salivary test strip where you place one end in your mouth, you get the end moistened with your saliva, you pinch it against the opposite test end, and it's testing for nitrate concentration in your saliva because we do recycle the nitrates that we ingest through our diet. Through the bloodstream, they get stored in the salivary glands, and then all day long, as we salivate, we're excreting nitrate into the mouth. And so we can use this 10-second test strip. It's not going to give you a quantifiable number, but it's been clinically correlated to a range of values based on the color that comes up on your test strip that have been clinically correlated to what would be measured in a lab. Because you're right, it's a gas. We cannot, on a blood test, take a nitric oxide laboratory value because it dissipates too quickly.
Right. No, it's so fast. And
It's
that's
gone in
important to
seconds.
know. It's gone in
Yeah.
seconds. Like that's the thing about, this very teeny molecule. Very powerful.
Yeah. Right.
Potent.
Yeah. So we have the salivary test strips. If you're watching,
I have my little test strips. If you're looking at us.
uh-huh.
And also I want to just point out that I am an ambassador to Berkeley Life as well. You're the scientific officer, and I'm the ambassador because I know how mission critical it is for our to have good cardiometabolic health and for women to feel energized and alive. And by being able to measure this in the morning, we're both doing our test strips right now.
Mine's pretty much in the target zone right now.
Let's see. I didn't take my supplement this morning. I've been a chicken with my head cut off. It's so funny. You're talking about brain fog yesterday. I don't know if it was the heat or it was the overstimulation or it could be perimenopause. Also, I didn't bring my nitrate supplements with my nitrate supplements with me, which my bad. But I got my son some grapes, some organic grapes, and I called them blueberries and then I called them cherries. And I just could not. I'm like, this is perimenopause in the wild. This is it right here, ladies and gentlemen. Like late luteal phase. I can't seem to find the word for grapes. I was like, well, how did I forget my supplements? This is what happens when you don't have your supplements with you.
That's right. So it's important to notice as you're testing, it's important to notice that or to recognize that our nitric oxide levels are going to fluctuate throughout the day. We want them to be as consistently sustainable as possible because there are just dozens of mechanisms of signaling that nitric oxide shows us. How'd you do?
Oh, it's on the lighter pink. It's a little bit on the lighter side. Yeah.
So Dr. Snyder has not taken her supplement today, and she has some oxidative stress going on. But really, she's beautifully using the raw ingredients she needs.
I am below threshold right now.
Okay. Which is no shame in that. It's a great tool to help you figure that out. She would take her dose of dietary nitrates. She would employ all the lifestyle factors we'll talk about probably next. And she would take her dose of nitric oxide support, their dietary nitrates, and some important cofactor nutrients to help us assimilate the nitrates. They would start circulating in the bloodstream. They would recycle what's not used in the moment to the salivary glands, and then it would show up as a brighter pink on the test strip.
Yes.
And when that happens, it happens pretty quickly. Within an hour to 90 minutes, that can happen. So when she does take her nitrates today, she's going to see about an hour later, she's going to see that she has refueled. Her shelves are stocked with nitrates, which then help us produce nitric oxide. And the cycle continues. Yeah. So it's not unusual for us to see patterns. And this is the way I encourage the use of the test strip so that if I get up in the morning and I test a little under threshold, and I make sure I'm going to have some nitrates in my breakfast. I'm going, I love greens for breakfast. I saute greens a lot for breakfast. And I'm going to take my supplemental dose. And then later I'm going to test. Well, let's say I'm going to go out later and after work and I'm going to go for a hike with my girlfriends along the river or something like that. If I test my levels again and I'm a little bit low, I can do one of two things. I can boost myself with a supplement or our prebiotic nitrate gum. I can do some other lifestyle factors that help me build nitric oxide, but I'm also motivated now. When I come home at night, I need to make sure I get those nitrate plentiful foods into my evening meal so that I am replenishing my stores for the next day. And I'm a nutritionist, and so I'm always looking for people to get dietary nitrates in food form, but knowing the levels of oxidative stress that we all experience, I know the need to supplement is also very foundational and very supportive of cardiometabolic health and my energy to do all those lovely things I want to do as I stroll the river and chat with my sisters in the woods.
That sounds so nice. So nice. I love it. I want to dive deeper a little bit into how we can boost up. What are the specific foods? Like you had mentioned, we know that a lot of us are not getting the daily requirement of the fruits and vegetables that we really need, particularly the veggies. And so, yes, it's going to be important, like you had said, to get them through our food, but also kind of similar to when I talk about omegas, I want you eating fatty fish. Like we're going to have salmon tonight for dinner with a lot of greens as well. And a lot of people are not getting, not having salmon or they're not eating fatty fish they're not getting their omegas. And so then the recommendation is to supplement too, like yes. And I supplement with omegas all the time, along with eating, we probably eat salmon twice a week, give or take. And so, same thing with this. Like, as much as I want you guys to all, everyone listening, listen to eat nitrate rich foods for a number of reasons, because these foods aren't just delivering nitrates, right? They're delivering all kinds of benefits, right? All kinds of fiber and vitamins and phytonutrients and antioxidants and micronutrients across the board. So there's it's a yes and. And if you're struggling and you're starting to see these biomarkers move in an unfavorable direction and you are feeling winded and you are experiencing a lot of the symptoms, which who isn't, the symptoms that Cathy had mentioned earlier in the beginning of this, like this is going to be an important consideration to be supplementing with the Berkeley Light nitric oxide supplement. And so I know that you talked about testing, then you can take 2 in the morning, but you can also break it up,
Right.
so talk to me a little bit about what you've seen. I usually have my patients take them in the morning. Usually they want to kickstart the day with as much energy as possible to get them through the day. But I'll also at times recommend, depending on how they're doing, we'll break up the dose.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I find in my work, I find everybody's nutrient needs are very bio individual. It has a lot to do with your lifestyle, with your heritage, with your food preferences, with some sensitivities you might have. So, not everybody's going to have the perfect time of day and the perfect dose for these supplements. And what I find is a lot of people, when they start taking the supplement, the first thing they feel is more energy. So yes, we put those 2 capsules in their breakfast. That's going to optimize their digestion and assimilation of those nitrates because you sort of need your digestive capacity to be good. Your upper gastrointestinal function is far better in the morning than it is in the evening time. So we want to give our body the best chance to pull those nitrates in to create nitric oxide. So I also start my patients with 2 in the morning at breakfast. I tend to take mine on an empty stomach. I have pretty good digestion these days. And so I take mine almost first thing in the morning. I drink my water, I put my feet in the grass and my face in the sun. I give some gratitude, and then I come in and I take my dietary nitrates. That's just sort of my little pattern. But let's say my patient is starting to feel or still feels that afternoon energy slump, and they might be looking for caffeine or sugar or, some other kind of comfort food or habit to get them through the afternoon. Let's split the dose. We know that our product carries enough nitrate, even in 1 capsule, to still have a 24-hour duration of effect. And the idea being we want those circulating nitrates to be at a consistent storage level all throughout the day as much as possible. So let's split the dose, take 1 at breakfast, 1 at dinner. I have a pretty active lifestyle right now, so I am taking 2 in the morning and then I take another one in the afternoon because I usually get my workouts in after the workday. And so I want to have that little bit of energy boost and that little bit of extra storage of nitrate to boost my energy before I go out for my afternoon or evening activity. So there's lots of ways to do that. A lot of people can also sort of graduate down to just 1 capsule a day when they're doing all the other lifestyle factors to make sure that they have good nitrate concentration and good nitric oxide production. So that would include, we talked about the foods. So let's expand the list. It's
Yeah.
your leafy green vegetables, spinach, kale, arugula, beet greens, Swiss chard, all those foods that in the summertime right now here in the Pacific Northwest are so beautiful and so plentiful. So we want to make sure we're ingesting those. Celery, rhubarb is another kind of uncommon one. Beets are very rich in nitrate and probably best known for helping boost nitric oxide. But there's other things we can do to build nitric oxide internally on our own. We can encourage the production of it. And one of the most important ones is breath work and specifically nostril breathing. So here in the Pacific Northwest, I experience a lot of individuals with just chronic sinus congestion, and they have sort of trained themselves to be mouth breathers. Or it's the woman who's out there just trying to get her 20 miles in for the week. And so she's constantly running and she's sort of lost that nostril breathing and she's doing lots of mouth breathing, right? We need to retrain ourselves to breathe in, especially through our nostrils. And when we do practice breath work with dedication to nostril breathing, we build nitric oxide in the parasinus cavity. And so that's one way to do it. And that it doesn't just hang out in the head, it, transfers to the bloodstream and now circulates. Moderate daily exercise is important. And you've been so great about promoting exercise and movement on your socials. I am now in your squat challenge, even though I haven't been
Yes.
doing it. And I
Kathy.
haven't been posting about it. But I want to tell you, my bestie has taught me years ago, do your squats when you're brushing your teeth. What else are you going to do? So it's great.
Right.
Yeah,
I
it's a
love
great time.
that.
So we'll give a plug to my bestie for that one.
Yes.
But the moderate exercise and initiating blood flow is a way to signal the body that, hey, we are moving. We need more blood flow. We need better circulation. I need more nitric oxide to widen the blood vessels. So moderate daily exercise is really, really crucial. And then there's some avoidance strategies we should talk about too. So I'm hoping that all your listeners are avoiding smoking and vaping. That's really detrimental to the health of the oral cavity and to our lungs. But we also know that nitric oxide relies on the health of the oral microbiome, and smoking and vaping are two things that will just destroy the diversity and the quality of your oral microbiome. So we want to avoid that habit. We also want to avoid at this stage of life, we want to avoid that excessive exercise. So we want to be moderate about it because every time we excessively exercise, we know that we are contributing to more oxidative stress. We don't want to create more. We want to back off some of that, moderate our exercise a little bit, let our body catch up to it. Sleep and skipping out on sleep. I call it vitamin S. Sleep is crucial to the repair process, and that includes the repair of our endothelial tissue, and that requires nitric oxide production. So there's going to be signaling going on at night when we are at sleep. And also, we know that nitric oxide signals a couple very important sleep cycles, the wakefulness, so that you do have the ability to get out of bed, but also that REM sleep that we all so desperately need. And then back to that oral cavity, besides the smoking and vaping, it's important to practice good oral hygiene, but maybe not the way that a lot of women have been taught over the years. The mouth is not meant to be this antiseptic environment. We want to avoid the use of antiseptic mouthwashes, toothpaste, things like that. And that might even include some very famous traditional remedies like essential oils that are antimicrobial, oil pulling when done in excess. They have their place in medical history and they're great remedies when they're done moderately. But in the American and North American culture, we tend to just take those good habits and go excessive with them. So we want to sort of limit that so that we can preserve the integrity of the oral microbiome. And all of that will preserve your capacity to make nitric oxide.
Mm. What I love so much is that I think what has been one of my favorite things about, not only improving nitric oxide levels, but it is very much a yes and. Not only are we improving nitric oxide levels and cardiometabolic health and sexual function and hormone optimization and so many areas of the body, but also these beautiful lifestyle habits. I love the squatting while you brush your teeth. I just love that so much, right? Anchor these things into the things that you're already doing, but that all of these habits are doing the same thing. It's like a 1-2 punch, in a lot of ways. It's kind of a double dip. It,
Yeah.
it's so that's that, and it makes so much sense. If nitric oxide is this beautiful vitality molecule that is helping to ensure that we have reduced oxidative stress, that we've got good blood flow, that we have good hormone signaling and connection, all the aspects, good mitochondrial function, the things that really matter in terms of our aliveness and energy. Like, it would make sense that the habits that help to optimize those things would also help to optimize nitric oxide because it's so all interconnected.
It is, and it's so foundational. You mentioned mitochondrial function, and I think that's a really important one for women to understand. As part of that energy loss is your cellular energy production is just not functioning appropriately. And part of that is from having tired, oxidatively stressed mitochondria.
Mm.
Well, one thing that nitric oxide does is signal a process called mitochondrial biogenesis. It's a process in which mitochondria are regenerated by fusing together to older mitochondria. We recycle away the parts that aren't serving them well, and we put together and fuse together two mitochondria. And this is happening constantly in the cell. And that those little energy centers, those little powerhouses, that just like your car engine needs an oil change once in a while and needs a new belt or a new part to keep it running smoothly, so do your mitochondria. And that's one thing that nitric oxide does is ensure that our mitochondrial health is optimal even as we age, and that ensures better energy production at the same time.
Mm. Agreed. Yes. This is what it all just makes so much sense to me. I love this. And the last thing I wanted to share, if a woman is listening right now and she's feeling exhausted, she's feeling dismissed, disconnected from her body, what's the first step she can take today to reclaim her vitality? What would you recommend, Cathy? Because I have a feeling your women are my women.
I think we all are the same women. You're right. The first thing I recommend really is sitting down and making a list of those nagging signs that make you feel like you're not who you used to be. And we in our perimenopausal age are not going to be the same woman as when we were 20. We have aged, we have grown, we have experiences, maybe we've had injuries, we've had children, we've had all these things change us and change us physically and emotionally. But take stock of what are the goals that you had at a younger age that you didn't accomplish and that maybe you still want to accomplish. Write them down. What do you think are some physical signs preventing you from meeting those goals? And start there. And while you're doing it, sipping a glass of pure water just to sort of reacquaint yourself with your primary nutrient, which is water in your body. So that, I mean, I think that's just a really basic first step. When you see those signs that relate to loss of energy, fatigue, temperature changes, whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, or cold hands and feet, or both, or you're starting to have nerve pain in your toes, maybe you get off the couch and your feet are falling asleep and you stand up and you can't take the next step because your nerves aren't really communicating as well yet. Take stock of all those things. Take stock of the fact that your nurse practitioner told you your blood pressure is creeping up. I think it's time we consider medication. Take stock of all of these symptoms that we talked about today, and then find yourself some Berkeley Life test strips and do the testing. Most of the people I work with will test low, if not even, and sometimes not even measurable on the test strip. And they're like, but I'm eating my salads every day. What's happening? I eat my leafy greens. Well, now we need to investigate, and probably with the help of a provider like yourself, investigate what else is going on in your health. We need good digestive function to assimilate our nitrates. So maybe you need to work on some support for your gastrointestinal system. And again, in that bidirectional communication, nitric oxide will help your digestion. At the same time, improving your digestion will help you take in the raw ingredients needed to make nitric oxide. And then when you test, and you can reach out to berkeleylife.com, we can send you a sample. And we're going to offer your listeners a discount here at the end of today's episode. But when you receive your sample, we encourage you to take a preliminary test. It's just a salivary test, dip it in saliva, pinch the ends together, look at your results. You're going to probably be low. Don't panic. Take a two
Don't
capsule
panic. It
dose.
happened to me
Don't panic.
today, right here on the interview.
Right. My worst thing is when it happens to me and I'm in the middle of a presentation, I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to always be in the pink, right?
Pink.
But yeah, sometimes we do forget our supplements. But yeah, then take your daily dose of 2 supplements. Think about those signs and symptoms. Drink it with some pure water. Wait 90 minutes. Test again. If you see some improvement, there you go. You know that your body is craving those dietary nitrates and those cofactor nutrients. Let's start getting them in the body on a consistent basis and taking them daily. And I'm going to say within 1 to 2 weeks, you are going to, this is clinically experienced information here.
Yeah.
You are going to start experiencing changes in your symptoms. Women report to me better energy. They feel like their bellies flatten out a little bit because we know that nitric oxide contributes to hormone and satiety, hunger and satiety hormones, but also to our gastric motility. So we start to digest better and we start to regulate our blood sugar better. And that starts to make a change in our body composition. And then the other thing women tell me is that their mental clarity is a little better throughout the day. They can get through their day, not confusing grapes for cherries. And I'm teasing you, of
I
course.
know. I know.
All the teens do that. But we can get through our days with a little more focus, a little more clarity, and a little more motivation to take those next steps. So then maybe, the next day you have a little more energy to go for that mile walk. And the next day you have a little more energy to go to that yoga class that your girlfriend's been inviting you to and you haven't attended yet. And I think we domino and we stack these habits more than we need to stack the supplements. And the thing I've noticed clinically about the nitric oxide support from Berkeley Life is that it reduces the number of additional supplements that my patients have to take, because when we open blood flow, we're also opening oxygenation to all our cells in our tissues and nutrient delivery. So our tissues, our organs, our systems are functioning better simply by the improved blood flow, the improved oxygenation, and nutrient delivery. And that's particularly important for the hormone balance that we are experiencing, or should I say imbalance that we experience in this age. We know that by improving blood flow, we open up better vascularity to the glands that produce and secrete the hormones. We improve their ability to bind to receptor sites. And if you are a woman in perimenopause and you're using hormone replacement therapy, you're likely going to find some improved symptoms really quickly, because the improved blood flow is going to increase the efficacy and the support that those bioidentical hormones are giving you.
I love this. I mean, it really does lend to the fact this is such a profound vitality molecule, Cathy. You did such a beautiful job just kind of breaking it down for us, really connecting the dots for us so we understand, like, okay, this is how we can really improve the way that we feel and how it'll allow us to take the next step and the next step. It's really about that win that I think is so powerful here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's stacking,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
habits. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over, because I Berkeley Life does, you guys do such a beautiful job in educating in the content and really connecting the dots as well. So I want everyone to go to berkeleylife.com. Also check them out on Instagram and YouTube. I know you guys we're building the YouTube channel right now as well.
Yeah.
And share all the details on where to find you.
Yeah, you can find us at berkeleylife.com, and there's 3 E's in there, BERKELEY life.com. If you have questions after today's episode about the company, about our product, you can contact us at info@berkeleylife.com, and we'll get all your questions answered. And for listeners of Dr. Snyder's Energize podcast, we're going to offer you a discount that'll be available through a link in the show notes. We encourage you to try our starter pack. Our starter pack comes with a tube of 50 test strips that gets you through, say, a couple weeks of really consistent testing 2 to 3 times a day, which I recommend when you get started, to sort of recognize your pattern of depletion and really ensure that these nitrates are being assimilated. And then it comes with a month's supply of Berkeley Life capsules. And we can also, through Dr. Snyder, she can educate you on how best to take those, what time of day suits you best, and what kind of symptom improvements you can see.
Perfect. I will have the link in the show notes as well. I'm so happy that we have a discount so you guys can get started, and we'll make sure to link to the actual starter kit so that you know exactly how to get started. Cathy, honey, this has been just so delightful and so grateful to have you on. You are such a wealth of knowledge, and I just love your very practical approach to helping women feel alive in their bodies.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I always enjoy speaking with you, and I can't wait. I think we're going to get to see each other maybe pretty soon.
Very soon. Yes.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
So, yeah, looking forward to that. And yeah, let's go out there, do our squats, take our nitric oxide support, and energize these women back into their most vital selves.
I love it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.